Okay, over to you, Peter.
Right. Thanks for that, Shanice. Um, right, Boltzmann West Mine. A bit of an intro. In the last 30 years or so, specimen mines have sprung up in Weardale, such as Rogerley, Dinah Maria, Lady Isabella, and Greenlaws. These have fundamentally really changed the way specimens, particularly fluorite specimens, have reached the mineral world. When I started collecting in Weardale, the supply of specimens, it relied on miners seeing something sparkling underground, finding a cavity, putting the specimens in the bag and taking them home to sell. Um, some of you may have heard of another mine in Weardale that in recent years, for a short time, also produced specimens for their own sake, Boltsman West Mine. Again, a bit of background. I mean, most collectors, certainly most people here would have heard of Boltzmann Mine, but until recently, the name referred to really that part of Boltzmann vein hosting the extensive flats running northeast of Ruckert village. These were the flats that in the past produced so many wonderful mineral specimens. The relatively unknown Boltzmann West Mine was rediscovered after some 80 years closed and hidden beneath the Pennine Fells, and for a short time in recent years has produced some wonderful mineral specimens itself. First, though, let's have a brief look at its better-known sibling. This picture, a twinned fluorite crystal, really demonstrates the quality of fluorite specimens found here. Colour, lustre, size. It's why Boltzmann is really the holy grail, but certainly many British fluorite collectors and abroad. So Boltzmann mineral specimens of fluorite and also combinations of fluorite with other species, such as galena, sphalerite, calcite, and quartz, can be found in mineral collections around the world. The specimens were discovered by the Weardale Lead Company, who worked the flats off Boltzmann vein from 1892 to 1932. For anybody who doesn't know what a flat is, just a very simple definition is flats are horizontal ore bodies occurring to the side of veins, usually, but not always, caused through dissolution of the limestone by hydrothermal solutions, creating voids that later solutions fill to a greater or lesser extent. Why are flats important to collectors? Because as a general rule, the best mineral specimens occur in flats rather than in the veins. Not always, but generally. Okay, the next slide gives an idea of how the mine appeared during this period of working, the Weardale Lead Company working. So this is Boltzmann engine shaft, sometime around 1917. The flats to the northeast, the famous flats, were accessed down the shaft and onto a level called Watts level. So you've got the headgear of the shaft here. This was a water wheel that was used to pump the mine, pump the water out the mine, and this was the water lead that brought the water to it. Notice even in that at that date, they were still using horses. And Boltzmann West Mine is some 100 yards to the left of picture. Another view of the mine, you've got the water wheel as before, the engine shaft, the water lead. But here you've got the boiler because they also had a steam winding engine for sort of pulling the ore out of the mine. And that was the boiler. And then there was an air compressor here. So certainly even in the time of the First World War, they were using compressed air. This is the edge of Boltsman village, and that's the local school. This is the rather unassuming entrance through which the vein southwest of the engine shaft was worked. This picture was taken in 2012. So for the first time then in 80 years, opening up this part of the vein has revealed the extent of the mine workings. And it really has revealed a treasure trove of mineral specimens as well. in some cases comparable, in my view, to those found in the more famous flat workings to the northeast. For the sake of clarity, this latter part of the workings, that's northeast of the engine shaft, I will refer to as Boltsburn East Mine, whereas to the southwest, we're calling it Boltsburn West Mine. Some people might disagree, but that's the way I'm going to do it. Okay, so to place it, we're in the northeast of England, up here. We're close to the Northumberland-Durham boundary. I'm sure some of you will recognise the names here. So we've got West Boltsburn Mine here, the East Boltsburn there. So this is Rookup. Oh, sorry, go back. This is, sorry about that. That's the Rookup Valley, and then we have the main valley here, the Weardale Valley. So the mines you'll recognise, we've got Rodgley Mine, Dinah Maria Mine, Lady Annabella Workings, Camberkeels, Heights Quarry, Heights Mine, Greenlaws Mine. So that gives a place. So it's quite central in the ore field. These blue lines, these are the mineralised veins. And there was two major mineralised veins, which was Red Vein, which had Fraser's, Grove Rake, Redburn, Stottsfield Burn, Stanhope Burn on. And then you had Slip Vein, which had Black Dean and Camberkeels on it. So this slide shows a side view of the vein and a plan view. So you've got Rookup, the village here, and the engine shaft. These are the flats to the northeast, marked in coloured in orange. And this is the, let's call it Boltsburn West vein, with the flats here also marked in orange. So let's try and put a timeline on Boltsburn West. So the 18th century, parts of the Boltsburn West vein were worked by the operators of the nearby Fulwood mine, or it was in those days it was known as Foulwood mine. And in 1819, the first level was driven specifically to work Boltsburn vein. 1822, soon after, a second level was driven by the Weardale Iron Company directly on the vein at about 12 metres above the earlier level to work the ironstone flats. That 12 metres is very important because you'll see on a slide later. And this 1822 level is the one that the mine explorers in Rookup accessed the mine and reopened it. 1857, the Weardale Iron Company ceased working, and it was idle till 1932, when the Weardale Lead Company, which were working the famous flats to the north, decided to reopen the mine for lead. It certainly was only partly successful, I think, in that period. And then in 1940, a survey of the mine was carried out to determine if there was sufficient iron ore reserves to justify reopening the mine, because of course it was, in the middle of the war. It didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't reopen. So, ore minerals. The main stone in the ironstone flats is siderite, and you may see it in older books as chalybite, but one and the same mineral. But as in the ironstone flats at Heights Mine, the flats here contain non-iron minerals, including fluorite, quartz, and galena. So here's an example of something from the flats. So you've got the unaltered siderite in the middle here. Then you've got an alteration zone around it. It'll be a limonite, goethite mix of some sort, I don't know. And then you've got the accessory minerals. In this case, you've got some rather nice cubes of fluorite. And the reason why this was the flats were worth working is that the altered siderite has a higher iron content than the siderite. So, for example, goethite has a 63% iron content, and siderite has only 48%. And the argument goes that the reason why the mine closed after going some 2 miles into the hillside was they hit the unaltered iron ore, i.e. the siderite, and it just wasn't rich enough to justify working, certainly at that distance underground. So, going through that attic portal I've just shown, they knew about it, and in 2013, efforts began to reopen the level. This is a picture of the level soon after entering. You can just make out the first collapse in the distance inside the arching. So here we are. This is a closer view of the collapse, showing how it had completely blocked the level. Evidence suggests that the arching must have given way, for the first time anyway, in the period between the mine closing in 1857 and the 1932 reworking, because the evidence is to access the flats in the 1932 reworking, miners must have dug through the collapse and then used timber to support the roof. These have subsequently rotted, leading to this section collapsing again. So, as well as the arching, the stone arching, the people reopening it found rotten timbers as well. So here we are. This is starting to dig out the collapse. You can see they're using a mix of timbers, usually scaffolding boards, that sort of thing, and then they're using scaffolding poles here to start propping up the roof and protect the diggers, in effect, at this point. Anyway, here's an unusual use for scaffolding poles. Moving large quantities of debris, the mud, stone, rotten timbers generated from digging, created a major problem. The solution really translated into this trolley and rail system, which proved invaluable to moving debris to places in the mine that could be backfilled. Because obviously in the level, you can take debris from one place, but where do you put it? If you're just going to put it behind you, that's not going to achieve anything. This was a later trolley that they designed. You can see the rails here. Apparently, the existing rails from the 1932 reworking were taken out again because again for the war effort, really. So Mark and his friends had to relay or make some sort of rail from scaffolding poles. The other thing to notice is the sandbags here. They were extensively used to prop up the mine walls. And here it was exceptionally unstable, and you can see the extent of what the Mark and his friends had to do here. So we've got the old rails here, and then we've got these really huge wooden props. A glimpse of the mine. So they must have been very pleased at this point. If you look there, you're looking through really into the inner workings of the mine. Again, you can see how much effort has gone into it. And if we look at the same hole from the inside, that's looking to the attic portal. And here, now they've got access to the other side, they can start putting scaffolding up really to extend the roof support. And a very professional job here, really. This is how the level looked after the team had finished work on the first fall. An excellent job. Certainly different from when I first went in. However, celebrations were short-lived. Just a short distance on, this site greeted them. Another serious roof collapse. What's happened here is the right-hand wall has collapsed, bringing the roof down with it. And again, the same thing, I think, with this collapse. The first fall probably occurred between 1857 and 1932. and the evidence being the rotten timbers found with the collapsed stone arching. These being the remains of the clearing and re-support work carried out by the Weardale Lead Company in 1932. Now, this is when I made my first visit, and perhaps, Jesse, it was at the same time you did. But this is, they did it, they cleared it at least to this point. And you had to crawl through on hands and knees on very wet mud. It was awful. You certainly didn't linger. And this stretch of level became known as the Chamber of Horrors. And I think you can understand why. This is it. I think it was the early part of 2015. You can see all the rails here that are still at an angle, but there's far more headroom here, and clearly it looks more stable than it did. And you've got sandbags used here to replace the stone that had collapsed in that right-hand side of the roof. And the finished job, certainly not the Chambers of Horrors as it was. Again, you can see the sandbags. These are the rails, but lots of headroom, and the rails that they put down to move the debris. Right, now this is an old map of the area. If I could just point out, this is Burn. This is that school you saw in one of the first slides. And you've got the entrance here is the one that has been reopened. These are flats on Red Vein, which is coming through in that direction. That was the first collapse, and this is the second collapse. So really, by this time, you hadn't made much distance into the mine. Must have been very disheartening for the people digging it out. Anything else there? No. And this is a more detailed plan view of the first section of the mine. To put it into scale, the mine extends probably 4 times further in than this map shows. So the blue colours are the levels and the flats. You've got the engine shaft here, and this, well, it's called New Level, but that is probably the 1819 level. And so what they found there probably was the justification for the Weardale Iron Company to drive this level. Anyway, so we've got the first, I might be able to magnify that. Yeah. So you've got the first dig there, Chamber of Horrors. These 2 points they call the Chasm of Doom, and you'll see why in a bit. Now, this is how, again, it looked when I first went into the mine. So you've got to get from here, obviously, to there. And as you can see, there's a false floor and there's a lot of holes in it. Piecing the history together, what we think's happened here is the old man, either from the 18th century workings from Fulwood mine or from the 1890 New Level, has mined some 12 meters below where we are now. So he would have been down there. And he stoked out the vertical vein for lead ore. Okay, so what happens by 1822, the Weardale Iron Company come along, and the flats are at this level. Okay, and so they need to get across here. So they put stone arching in. However, by the 1930s, when the Weardale Lead Company come to work the mine, this has partially collapsed. So to get across, what they do, they use old rails as stemples, and then they have put a wooden floor across, obviously, to traverse it. But by now, the timber has rotted. So progress was a mixture of stepping on these rails and going round as best you could round the edge of what remained of the stone arching. It was not a place for the faint-hearted. It really wasn't. And as we've said with Jesse, it could have been the set for an Indiana Jones movie. It really could. Anyway, the solution that the people came up with was they got a load of scaffolding boards. These stemples were in reasonably good condition, so they used these scaffolding boards across from one to the other. But at this point, you really do wish you perhaps hadn't started off to come into the mine. So after the Chasm of Doon, progress along the level improved, eventually opening up quite dramatically when the first ironstone flats appeared. It's a completely different mindscape here. The level's bordered by huge mined out areas, and these have been part backfilled with the mine waste. There are still the old roof supports, but they don't look as if they'd support much now. And I put this picture in because it gives an idea of the scale, really, of the ironstone workings. I mean, they were amazing. They were so huge. And above we're in the Great Limestone here, and the strength of the coal sills, which is a sandstone, it forms the roof. It shows how strong that was, in that it's still self-supporting. I mean, a lot of mines, this would have all collapsed by now. Okay. The mine was walked on what they call a board and pillar system, and it's probably the most common traditional way of working a horizontal ore body. Areas would be mined away, but sufficient rock would be left to create pillars, like these here, to ensure the roof continued to have sufficient support. And here you can sort of just make out the mineralized cavities. That was probably one at some time. Okay. And this photo, I hope, gives some idea of the height of the flats. The two collectors here, working cavities for specimens, gives an idea of the scale. And I'm here at Rookup, the Great Limestone, which is one of the stratas of the limestone. It's some 20 meters in thickness. And it's the favoured, really, host rock for flats in the North Pennine ore field. And at Boltsburn West, the flats are in what's called the high flat horizon. For comparison, for those who have visited Rogerley Mine, there was two levels, one in the high flat, one in the middle flat. So here again, you can see the extent of the workings. This is the level going on into the flats. These are the rock pillars that have been left. Again, you can start to see the extent of the cavities that would have contained the accessory minerals. These grey, they're probably just efflorescence. I don't think they're actual cavities. So generally, as we've said, the roof was self-supporting, but occasionally roof supports are evident. And by stacking the deads up to the roof level, these were sometimes used as part of the supporting structure. Now this map is the second quarter of the flats. Again, we need to magnify it. Now you can see some of you've got your yellow fluorite in the roof here. You've got some clear and gemmy, obviously referring to the fluorite crystals. So all an interesting area, and you can see how much there was, which in the years that it was open, Mark says that they didn't really explore all the flats. That was an interesting one. They called it the Hitler flat. Gemmy green fluorite in pillar wall, purple glassy twins with galena cubes. It sounds wonderful. And there's a reason why they called it the Hitler flat. Because there in the mine, there was the front page of the News Chronicle. That was the paper of the time. And it's dated the 21st of March, 1936. And you can see the headlines. Hitler delays his decision. I don't really know what decision it was, but clearly he was making a decision. And then we move on to, we're going on in through the flats now. Again, I should be able to. So you've got references to gemmy green fluorite in pillar walls, wonderful words for mineral collectors. Here, marked, you've got an intact wheelbarrow and rails, a kibble, an old wooden kibble, and you can see these are the dates when these were found. So you can see we're in the second half of 2015 now in this part. And here you've got an extensive deposit of yellow fluoride. On Collector's Corner, clearly there was some nice stuff found there. This green line is a level that was driven about 5 meters above these flats. And I don't think anybody quite understands why it was driven. Obviously, a lot of work went into it, so there must have been a reason, but I don't think anybody's been able to put a sort of a reasonable reason for it. And the mine, as you can see from this picture, had numerous levels driven off it. I think these were testing not only the Boltsburn vein at different horizons within the Great Limestone, but also other veins, particularly Fullwood and Red vein. I mean, there were certainly crosscuts to them. And again, Mark said there was so many levels leading off that they just couldn't, in the time they had, explore everything, which was rather sad. Generally, the flats were dry, but there were certainly areas underwater, and that did impede progress, certainly further into the mine anyway. This picture shows what happened after they cleared some of the blockages, which were clearly acting as dams. But you can see the original water level before they started work, and you can see where it is now. And then there were areas like this, ochreous mud, not very pleasant, and you've got the beginnings of stalactites, obviously, coming off the roof. Now, I mentioned that a kibble was found when we were showing the map. You can see it here at the side of the level. This probably dates from the 18th century, and generally they would be attached to a chain and used for hauling ore to surface. There's a closer up view of it here. You can see its construction now. It's a classic sort of barrel type construction with wooden staves, and then they were formed into a cylinder using the iron hoops here. Again, there was a wheelbarrow marked on the map. This is it. It's nearly complete. with a cast iron wheel, which certainly puts it into the 19th century. Again, you can see the sort of size of the flats here. This is an ore wagon that had been found, obviously left by the Weardale Lead Company. So its construction would suggest it is from the 1930s working, and it appears to have one of the sets of wheels replaced. And the other interesting thing I thought when I saw this picture was how carefully the deads, the waste rock, how that had been stacked, and it was still stacked, still remained stable after 100 years. This was one of the surprising finds from the reopening. It's some sort of a yoke. So you've got your wooden bar, and then you've got your two iron hooks here. And this would have gone across the carrier's shoulders, possibly a child, to which either end, some sort of bucket would be attached by a rope. And it really is difficult to put together an explanation of what purpose that might have had underground. Mark thinks there's a possibility that in certainly the 18th century workings, they only just took the actual vein out, which sometimes would only be something like 18-inch wide. So the thought was that it was the only way of getting the ore out was by walking sideways with something like this on your shoulder. Whether that's a realistic explanation, I don't know. The jury's out, as they say. So, getting on to the mineralization. There was anybody who did go down it would remember there was some absolutely enormous cavities. And sometimes these were filled with fluorite cubes. I mean, this one obviously coated in mud, and it's got cubes up to something like 25 centimeters. But as anybody who's ever tried to attempt to get crystals that size out of a thug, they're certainly nearly impossible. I've never managed it anyway. So here's another cavity. It's a fluorite tower. This is there's dried out mud to the left and on top of the tower, and this is more fluorite. Again, crystals up to about 25 centimeters. And the other thing is, at this size, there is beginning to be some surface alteration of the fluorite. I don't know whether you can see these white areas, which, on the crystal faces, which are the beginning of the alteration. Another cavity here. The mine pit really gives a sense of scale, I hope. So you've got purple fluorite cubes coated with, it'll be a micro quartz, but some hellish cavities in there. And one more, the hand in this picture again gives an idea of the size of the crystals and really the impossibility of getting those out. I really wouldn't know where to start. The predominant colour of fluorite in the flats is purple. But as with Boltsburn East, there's a range of colours. And here we have a large cavity, and this one is lined with yellow fluorite. A roof pocket here. This is was filled with green fluorite, and this is something like 40 mil across. And it's part coated. very often the fluorite was coated with quartz from here. And in fact, many of the fluorite is completely covered in quartz crystals. You just get the outline of the original cube, if you like, on it. Another huge cavity here. This time it's lined with a form of nailhead calcite, and some of them have been elongated into towers. I did get some calcite specimens from the mine, but I'm sure I really did miss out. I'm sure there's a lot of very nice calcite specimens in Boltsburn West. Now, this is typical of how specimens recovered from a cavity were. They have this thin layer of mud, and it made it difficult to assess the quality and colour of the crystals whilst underground. I guess, Jesse, you would have had the same problem at Rogerley at times. And there is a gloved hand here just to give you some idea how big that how big that specimen is. I'll put this one in. That's collecting for you. That chap was certainly tenacious. So he's obviously, there's a cavity here, and he's decided to go for it. So good for him. I hope he got something good. Okay, let's now have a closer look then at some of the mineral specimens. A little bit of mineral bling. We've got a hand. It's obviously somebody's hand here, and it gives you a sense of scale. This is a lovely, large, aesthetic goethite tower, and it's overlain with fluorite crystals. I mean, I would guess they'd be in the sort of 20 to 25 millimeters size. A really nice specimen. I don't know where that finished up, but I would have really liked that one. I put this picture in. It gives you an idea of the quality in terms of luster, colour, transparency of some of the fluorite down there. We've got a 2p coin here to give an idea of scale. And this specimen is from the same cavity. You can see the similarities in it. But galena specimens, in my experience, aren't common from Boltsburn West. And that really confirms that they were poorer in lead ore than the flats to the northeast, which did often have, the specimens often had galena crystals. The galena crystals here are hidden, or part hidden. You can tell there, and they're covered with this microcrystalline quartz. But they're made for lovely specimens. And it suggests also in the paragenesis that the fluorite had come after the quartz, because there's no quartz actually on the fluorite. This is a specimen just come out of the mine. It's been washed. So you can see it's got a thin goethite matrix, some nice big 6 centimeter cubes, but one of these little bricks, nice transparent brick, and they were in the mine, as were single crystal floaters, which also occurred at Blackdean, Greenlaws, Fraser's to an extent, and they certainly occur here. I put this picture in because not all specimens in the mine were perfect by any means. there's three here that, again, the effects of weathering are apparent. You've got a little bit of limonite staining, and you've got these white areas on the fluorite, and really no luster whatsoever. However, there were many large fluorite specimens with good colour and luster, and here's one of them. This is roughly 45 centimetres across, with something like 6 centimetre cubes on it. A little dusting of quartz on it, but a really nice cabinet specimen. Again, I put this in to show really the quality. You've got a 5 centimetre fluorite twin here, and you can start seeing the growth lines, I hope, on the actual fluorite twin. A couple of twins off matrix. You're starting to get this elongation, which is, I think, very attractive in fluorite specimens on the left-hand side one here. And again, you've got a 2p piece, really, for size comparison. Again, a little bit of siderite, and sometimes the siderite had started forming before the fluorite had finished. And so you can see it just inside the fluorite there. Again, the paragenesis, quartz seems to be generally earlier than fluorite, as shown by this combination specimen. So you've got 1 2 centimetre quartz crystals here, and you've got the fluorite. But then there must have been at least one more generation of quartz, because, as I said before, you sometimes got quartz completely enclosing the fluorite. So it does seem to be a 2-generation thing. Now, these were somewhat unusual, these specimens, and there was a few of them came out. So this is quite a big specimen. These fluorite blocks are something up to about 7 centimetres. So you've got a goethite, limonite matrix, and they were just scattered across it. And they really did make for interesting and aesthetic specimens, really. Oops, sorry. There we go. This is some of the better quality calcite. A nice fluorite cube coated with calcite, but then if you backlight it, you can start to see the colour zoning. So you've got a pale purple in the centre, clear, and then a darker purple. Okay, a range of colours. This was unusual, certainly in the larger cubes here. These, you've got zonation, and they were from clear through to grey through to black. Really, it was the only one I saw from Boltsburn West like that, but it shows it occurs. And then continuing on the theme of a range of colours, here we have a big specimen, a large specimen. You can see from the hand underneath, and this is a deep green specimen. And another green specimen here. This time it's zoned with dark green in the centre and a paler green to the edge. And you have a smattering of the quartz again here. More colours, this time yellow-green, and then you've got this dusting of it looks like altered siderite here, and I thought that was very reminiscent of West Pasture. And then you've got these amazing floater specimens. They're like another goethite type tower, altered siderite, and it's encrusted with these green crystals. And then a little bit of the white is aragonite. And there's an even larger one, probably from the same pocket, but a really huge floater piece. So coming back to the mention of the yellow cavities, here's a smaller three-dimensional group of crystals lined with altered siderite again, but very pretty. This was a lovely group of yellow fluorite crystals, quite deep colour, but the blue-purple is purely the fluorescence responding to the UV in the daylight. And two lovely smaller crystals here, a nice deep yellow, different from, let's say, a Hilton yellow. So I'm sure you could tell it apart. Anecdotally, I thought the yellow fluorite had a less tendency to form twin crystals than, say, the blue or the purple. Now, this reminded me of a Camber Keels piece. So you've got the green centers, and you've got a clear edges, and then you've got the quartz on top of it. So you can see the whole range of colours from the mine. So we get onto the zone crystals. I think this is an amazing crystal, a wonderful crystal. Rotherham Fell Mine has always been regarded as the, if you like, the best for zoning, but this must come very close to it. You've got you've got yellows, greens, pinks, clear, all in the same crystal. And the other unusual find really was the predominance of this light to mid blue colour. I've never seen it before in Weardale. Somebody might correct me, but I certainly hadn't seen it before. And it's very characteristic of some of the cavities in Boltsburn. Here's another one with that sky blue colour. Here it's sandwiched between paler, sort of ice-coloured zones. And just a small crystal, but you've got a broad band really of this really vibrant green, and then you've got pale areas either side. Another zonation here, much darker colours. You've got sort of a navy blue, you've got a very dark green, perhaps purple, and you've got the clear. And then regrettably, this picture is slightly out of focus, but it's an exceptional crystal, in my opinion. The multiplicity of colour zones here is amazing. It really is. Okay, so not just fluorite down there. There are cavities lined with calcite. This is a nailhead type calcite specimen, the curved rhombohedral crystal, and this seems to be the predominant habit of the calcite crystallization in Boltsburn West. The other thing characteristic of the calcite here, it's strongly fluorescent in shortwave UV light. So this is the specimen in daylight, a little bit of goethite on it, calcite. And as you can see from the fluorescent picture, there are cubes of fluorite in it. So they do make nice additions to any fluorescent display. Slightly smaller scale. This is obviously the specimen in daylight, and here we have it with that pink red fluorescence in shortwave ultraviolet. Now, they were adamant that this specimen came out the mine. And it's got to be barytes. I don't think there's any question that it's barytes. However, there's a generally acknowledged zonation in the North Pennine ore field of gangue minerals. Fluorite in the central area, as in, say, Dina Maria Mine, Rogerley, Greenlaws, and it gives way to barytes towards the periphery. So you're talking then about Dufton Mine, Hilton Mine, where barytes is common. So as Boltsburn West Mine is quite central in the ore field, this well-crystallised specimen of barytes is unusual and really scientifically interesting, but it must be very suspect. So if anybody's got any information on that, I would appreciate what you know. So this is the remaining part of the mine, the sort of fourth quarter, if you like. I'll try and, here we go. So this is the adit portal is to the right, and we're coming through here. And the flats, as you can see, continue. Quite a few rises up into the strata above. Large cavity filled with massive nail head crystals. I think that's a bit of a tautology, but there you go. Gemmy calcite here. So still lots of mineralization. Blue pocket, we'll come on to that in a minute. And then you get to the forehead of the mine, you're something like 2.4 kilometers underground now. So you're well underground. But let's come back to this blue pocket. Something like 2 kilometers underground. This is a sketch map Mark did for me. So you've got the level here, and then you've got two side passages. The pocket, the blue pocket, was initially found in this this side passage, just before there was a rise. And it turned out they'd hit a very complex and very interesting pocket. If you like, moving on a little bit, is they worked it from here through to here, but they realized that there was a second side pocket, which unfortunately had been backfilled with deads, but it would have given them access to the pocket from another direction. And the pocket just seemed to be going on. There was no limit to it from what you could see as you approached it from this distance. So whether anybody will get in there again and attempt that, unfortunately, in the time that Mark and his friends had, they just didn't get round to it. So here's a picture of someone collecting in a small chimney pocket coming off the blue pocket. There were a number of these, all well mineralized and worth putting up with a cramped collecting space. And here's some pictures of the specimens from this blue pocket, and you probably guess what colour they are from the name of it. So we've got a large cabinet piece here, 240 by 170 millimeters. It's got this dusting of really gorgeous, lustrous chocolate brown siderite, and you've got an edging of small calcite crystals. Lots of twins, it readily twinned here. One of the difficulties, as probably a lot of you know, of photographing fluorite is getting the colour correct. And this isn't quite there. It is bluer than that. And to show you really the difficulties of photographing it, here's the same piece in a slightly different light. And you can see this looks more purple than the previous one. Many of the fluorite cubes, as in the last specimen, were around the 10 to 20 mil size. However, there were areas of larger crystals, as on this specimen. So here, this crystal here is something like 40 mil across. And you can see even this one is, there is zoning in it as well. A number of floater specimens were found in the blue pocket. This is one 90 by 55 mil. So there's blue lustrous fluorite on one side, again dusted with the chocolate brown siderite and the calcite. Turn it over, and you've got a complete bed of calcite epitaxially coating the fluorite. It's an amazing little specimen, and I'm sure there was more of those. This is one I was lucky enough to get. Again, trying to get this blue colour in a photograph. This is slightly paler, but again, it's another example of how unique the colour of this pocket is, really. And this is a cabinet size specimen, again, from the same pocket, crystals up to 18 mil, lovely size, 260 mil by 150. Anybody who has got specimens from this pocket, I'm sure they appreciate them, and it's very distinctive, this colour, and with that dusting of the chocolate brown, with the chocolate brown siderite. The other thing to mention is that, remember, we saw the sky blue colour in some of them. Again, that's very characteristic, I think, of Boltsburn West. If it's unlabelled and you've got that colour, I think you've got a fair chance, certainly if it's a British specimen and a Weardale specimen, of it coming from Boltsburn West. So that might be useful in the future. So, sadly, local opposition from certain people led to the abandonment of the operation in 2022, and the mine is no longer accessible. For 2 to 3 years, though, the mine produced some amazing specimens, which really have found their way into many mineral collections and museums around the world. And we're also lucky in that Mark Hardy, one of the group, has brought to the recent North Pennine Expo mineral shows some superb specimens from Boltsburn West, and we've been able to enjoy them. Incidentally, that show takes place annually every July in Weardale, and it's on, I think this year it's July the 19th and 20th, if anybody's interested. So it's quite sad. This is a metal plate that's being put over. The sides have been reinforced, and it's locked inside, so you can't even get at the lock. So as to the future, I mean, fluorspar is now on the European critical minerals list, really driven by recent geopolitical events. This may create an environment more conducive to mining in the Dale. And indeed, in 2021, a company called Fluorspar Ventures Limited was formed with a view to mining fluorite for industrial uses and mineral specimen recovery. That's our part of it. This may involve the reworking of tips in the immediate area of Rookett Village, reworking of Boltsburn West Mine. That is certainly on the cards. And there's a possibility at a later date of opening up Boltsburn East Mine. But because the Great Limestone dips to the north, the problem with that is the flats are very deep and flooded. So it would be quite a mining operation to get to those. but certainly Boltsburn West would be relatively easy. At the present time, discussions are ongoing with the church commissioners who have the mineral rights, their agents, Savills, and the planning authority regarding the project. And just one last point, a reminder really for those who are lucky enough to have specimens from here. I mean, most of you know fluorite can be sensitive to sunlight, and Boltsburn West material is no exception. Sensitivity varies from area to area within the mine, and luckily enough, most specimens from here are very stable. But some pockets, it can be susceptible to direct sunlight, and therefore it's best to be on the safe side and keep any specimens, out of direct sunlight, which really applies to any fluorite specimen. I mean, I've seen Heights mine fluorites on garden walls in the Dale, and they've been a pale pink. And I'm sure when they came out, they were the typical Heights mine green sort of thing. And then really, finally, I'd like to thank the group of explorers who did open up the mine, particularly Mark Hardy, first for their tenacity and hard work in getting into the mine. And I hope you now appreciate that, having seen some of the pictures. And secondly, for allowing me to use their maps and photos associated with reopening the mine. I mean, the map that Mark has done that I've showed you sections of is really excellent and very professional. So that's it, folks. That's Boltsburn West Mine.